Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Saving America welcomes FM Red O'Loughlin III. He is a researcher, author, public speaker, independent publisher, and broadcast host himself. He speaks on health and wellness, aging, personal growth, and motivation. Red retired as a naval captain with 31 years in the Navy Reserves. He was a naval flight officer and flew nearly 1,000 missions in P-3 anti-submarine aircraft. He served in Vietnam and retired as the Deputy Director of Reserve Affairs in Stuttgart, Germany. Red has traveled to 60 countries during his military career. Captain O'Loughlin has been awarded numerous military honors due to his long and distinguished career. Red's professional civilian specialties are quality assurance, reliability engineering, and logistics. He has worked in senior management positions at National Semiconductor, Memorex, Dresser Industries, NL Industries, Boeing, and Halliburton. I had to stop the bio there since otherwise there'd be no time for the interview. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. We welcome Red O'Loughlin for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you, Dave. I am really honored to be on your show. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
And in turn, I think you know I am what they call a Navy brat. My dad did 28 and a half years in the Navy, so very respectful of the military, and certainly your commitment to the military is much appreciated. With your long military career, what do you think of the current focus of the U.S. military in its difficulty recruiting new enlistees? Do you have some suggestions?
Well, I went in during Vietnam, and so that's a totally different mindset. Because back then I expected, having a degree in chemistry, that I was going to be excluded from the national defense exemption at that time. And then the president decided, no, they want the best and the brightest. Everybody comes in. And so unless you had a family already or you went to Canada, you were part of that crowd that got there. And so there was very little opportunity for you not to go in. Now, we had the Vietnam War going on, not very popular. You turn that around to look at 9/11, and then everybody's going in. So it's a perspective of what's going on in the world at the time. You have people who says, well, I can go in the military to avoid going to jail. I can go in the military to learn a new trade. I can go in the military to do whatever. So you have people coming in, they want to be pilots. They want to be whatever their passion is. They may not even know what it is. Maybe they just need the stability of the military. So from a perspective, I think that there's a couple drivers. And right now we're in that cycle where you have the wokeness and the DEI and other social engineering things. And I don't think the military ought to be a social engineering organization. You want a tip of a spear that will go in and take care of whatever's there, but you also need the logistical support. You need a lot of other things to make those things happen. So from a perspective of, if 10 years ago, my perspective was different than today, but let's say that you had a son coming out of high school and you asked me as a military, would you talk to him? I would say, Dave, I'd be more than happy to. And so I go talk to, let's say his name is John. And John, you're getting ready to graduate. What, you have any career? No, they don't know what they want to do. Well, I would recommend they go in the Coast Guard initially for 2 to 4 years. Why? Because in the Coast Guard, it's a much smaller service and you give a lot more responsibility at the lower levels. You take a level such as a enlisted level 4 second class petty officer, and the responsibility isn't the same. In the Coast Guard, you have tons of responsibility at that level, but in the Navy, Army, and Air Force, they're not allowed that level of responsibility because that's usually reserved 2 or 3 levels up. And so you end up with a situation where you have the military discipline, you have the stability, you have a lot of things there. So now they put 3 or 4 years in, they have some kind of educational program. They get out, they can go to college because now it's going to be paid for. Now, if they want to go in, depending on what their skill sets and what their goals are, they want to go in the Air Force, the Marine Corps, whatever. They have that option. They can go in the reserves. So there's a lot of things there. But I think that the Coast Guard, and I've worked with them a lot over the years, and that's what's changed my perspective. But I think that would be a perfect place for a young person to go, because you're going to get that responsibility, the discipline immediately, and then you can make a better decision when you're 20, 21, 22.
Well, switching gears a little bit, Red, I know that your passion is health and wellness. And what of your books might people want to read, and how would that help them? Where can they find those books that you've written?
Okay, all of my books are available on my website or on the Amazon. So I just usually send people to Amazon. It's a lot easier. Just put in Red O'Laughlin and my books pop up. My website is redolaughlin.com. But I'm a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. And so we have a problem as you're treating symptoms, but the cause keeps getting worse over time, and you see no progress, whatever. So I'm looking for things. In other words, if I were to say, let's get calcium into your bones. Well, you need to take something that's calcium, and most people take calcium carbonate. It's a pill. It's worthless because it takes so much to get a little bit into the body. But let's say you're eating the right combination of fruits and vegetables, and you're getting your calcium, but you have to have magnesium in your body in order for that to get processed. It's not bioavailable. So now you get the calcium in the stomach, it's being absorbed, it's leaving the duodenum. And if you have enough vitamin D3, the calcium is going to be pulled into the bloodstream. Okay, now you get in the bloodstream, that's where you want it, but you want it in the bones. However, if you don't have enough vitamin K2, that calcium is going to go to your heart valves and arteries as plaque. So now you have to have vitamin K2, vitamin D3, magnesium, and calcium. So that's kind of, there's other things in there, but that's the short one. Now you get it into the bones, it's much more difficult to keep it in the bones than it is to get it there. Because what happens is your body has what's called a pH. It's a balance between being acidic and alkaline. And the body's blood system needs a pH of about 7.4, plus or minus a little. And so if you're in 7.4, hey, everything's fine. Calcium stays in the bones, everybody's a happy camper. But anytime you eat protein, fat, carbohydrates, you exercise, you breathe, you think, your body becomes more acidic, less than 7.4. What happens then? The bloodstream reaches into the bones, grabs calcium molecules, and stabilizes the pH of the bloodstream. Now, I've been a runner for decades, weightlifter, I've been all sorts of stuff. The very first time I ever had a bone density test, I was osteopenic, and it just drove me crazy. I couldn't figure out why. Well, I looked at all the things I was doing when I started doing some research, and I was keeping my body severely in that acidic range. So my body was constantly leaching my bones of calcium in order to maintain a blood pH for health. So what happens when you get old? Well, brittle bone, other things, and those things are issues that become a problem. And so you have to take primarily fruits and vegetables in a higher level of dose in order to offset all those other foods you eat and all the other activities you have, just the metabolic processes. So what I do is that's what I look at. Now I have 2 books out there. The Joy of Ageless Health covers 7 different things: stress, toxins, radiation, infection, inflammation, diet, even expectations. These are things that operate at the cellular level in the body and do that inflammation, chronic low level. You're starting to get some level of mutation at the DNA level. So if that's the case, what can you do about it? Well, with stress, there's certain things, with toxins, there's certain things. And I go into detail on the Joy of Ageless Health as to what can you do to prevent disease from even taking part in the body. So if we follow that other exercise and say, if I'm getting a lot of fruits and vegetables, I'm probably keeping my body alkaline, which just really pushes off a lot of diseases, but also makes us a lot more healthier down the road. The other one that I would talk about today real quickly is the Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging. And that particular one talks about the 2 primary causes of aging: the telomere length at the end of your DNA, where the DNA is kind of wrapped around each other. It's, if you look at your shoelace, you have a caplet at the end, a little plastic thing that keeps all the fibers together. Well, every time the cell replicates, you lose a little bit of the end of that telomere. And over time, the cell replicates enough, boom, there's not enough there, the cell dies, normal death, planned. That's the way everything works. However, if you're overweight, you're a smoker, you have diabetes. Instead of having just a little bit of that telomere cut off, you have a lot of that telomere cut off. And so you kind of reduce the age of that cell. The other one is a thing called human growth hormone. When we're little kids, we got tons of that stuff. However, as you get older, you're making less and less. And there's a lot of things with age that you make less and less. Well, something as simple as a fast will cause that human growth hormone to increase significantly. And so those are things that I talk about in there. What causes you to age? What can you do to accelerate your aging? What can you do to decelerate your aging? So those are two books that I would recommend: The Longevity Secrets of Healthy Aging and The Joy of Ageless Health. So those are two that I would strongly recommend to somebody who has a real interest in keeping their health.
Sounds good to me, Brad. Our third question today is we're going to switch gears a little bit. As you know, we met for lunch recently, and you shared with me your new book, Heaven, the Final Destination. Please tell our audience a little bit about that book and how it might help them.
Okay, I'm a Catholic. I have been all my life. I consider myself devout. I go every Sundays. I go to confession. I keep up with that stuff. I was at church yesterday for a couple hours, adoration, etc. Anyway, I'm getting older. I would love to go to heaven. I think that's our general destination for most of us. That's our desire. Now, Catholics believe in purgatory, which other religions don't necessarily consider. But I want to know, how can I get to heaven, David? Straight there, bypass purgatory. That was my desire. So when I started researching, I found it's the same thing that I do. If I say, okay, tell me about what causes cancer? What causes Alzheimer's? You can't ask that question. You have to ask it in a roundabout way. Well, the same thing in the Catholic faith. I go to the magisterium, tradition, history, scripture, Bible, and then you have to almost go into some specifics. What did God promise? What did Jesus promise? What did Mary promise? And when I start looking at those things, I can find promises in there. You do this, you get this reward. Okay, well, why isn't the church teaching me more about that? Because that's my long-term destination. I want to know. Well, my perspective is things have changed over time, where they used to talk about heaven and hell and long sermons. Now it's a homily, and it's more or less focused on something that the bishop in the diocese wants to talk about, or something dealing with the gospels and readings of the day. But if we look at sin, and you have the sin, and the traditional way that it was explained to us as little kids, you break a window and you go next door and you ask for mercy, you ask for forgiveness, and the guy says, no problem at all, you're forgiven, I understand, you're kids. Well, when I go to confession, that external punishment due to that sin is forgiven, but there's a temporal permanent punishment, not from God's perspective, but from the sin itself. Now, that is the sin that I have to make up for. That temporal punishment, according to the Catholic faith, is something that has to be taken care of in purgatory in order to enter heaven purified. And so I look at those things that, well, how do I get there? Well, baptism, sacrament wipes all that out. So if I wait till I'm 78 years of age, I get baptized and I die at 78 and a half, I'm pretty good shape. But if I get last rites at 78 years of age, that's a free ticket straight into heaven, because it removes all that temporal punishment. But there's a lot of other things. If we just look at a simple thing, David, if you don't ask, you're not going to receive. So ask and receive, expect. But the other things in the sacraments, there's a brown scapular. I wear this thing. There's certain promises that with that scapular, you have plenary indulgences. There's certain requirements for that take away the temporal punishment. There are First Fridays, First Saturdays. There's a lot, Seven Sorrows of Mary. There's a lot of things, but I think probably one of the biggest ones is the St. Bridget prayers. There's a 15 prayer combination for a year and a 7 prayer combination for 12 years. And the 7-year compilation is one that specifically God says, you do this for 12 years. And the first thing on the line, it says, no purgatory. Well, I'm at 78 years of age. Well, that's 90. Well, I might as well say it the rest of my life, because I'm, at some point in time. Now, let's say that I'm saying it and I've only said it for 5 years. Well, they have a caveat in there that says your intention was, you're doing it. Okay, you earned it. So anyway, that's what I talk about in my book. And that if you're a devout Catholic and you want to really know a little bit more about how you get your soul into heaven, I would strongly suggest you look at that one.
Sounds fascinating. I think most of us do want to go to heaven for sure. And Red, you mentioned it a minute ago, but how can our audience get more information about you and your books?
RedO'Laughlin.com. That's RedOlaughlin. RedOlaughlin.com. It's probably the easiest place to get information about me. I'm available you give me a call on the phone, I'll talk to you. That's usually the best way to reach me. But I have email sites. I check some of them. I got 3 different ones. I check, one constantly 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. I check the other ones usually once or twice a day. But yeah, send me an email, give me a phone call, take a look at my stuff on my website. More than happy to have a conversation with you.
Sounds like a winner. Thank you very much, Red O'Laughlin, for joining us on Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks to our audience for joining us. And if you've enjoyed it, please subscribe on your favorite platform.